Welcome to Told by the Fire, a weekly podcast of original stories of strange happenings and ghostly occurrences told in the dark of the woods. Relax, take a load off. You should be fine, as long as you stay by the fire. Welcome back to the second part of our tale, What Comes Knocking. When we last left her, the young woman in our story had moved into a new house, unpacked her things in a strange room, and locked an even stranger heavy wooden door. She had begun to grow uneasy with the house, and is now realizing that what at first had seemed like a dream job may be anything but. She will soon find out that her unease and fear is just beginning as the job of her dreams becomes a nightmare. I now present to you the conclusion of What Comes Knocking. I woke that first night to light footsteps in the hallway right outside the door. The steps did not move far from one side to the other. It seemed concentrated around the threshold. At times, it even stopped as if whoever was outside was attempting to listen in to discover if someone was in the room. I remained quiet. I didn't even want to breathe. Had I locked the front door? Yes, I clearly remembered locking the door. It was right after I had watched the old woman disappear around the corner, and I had begun to wonder where her car was parked. Who or what could it be then? I wanted to call out, but my own fear silenced me. At least the heavy door was there, standing sentry between the two of us, and that protection brought a modicum of relief. I lay there listening to the footsteps and strained my ears against the quiet when whatever it was stopped right in front of the door. These were the moments when I listened for anything, a light tap or a thud, breathing, anything really. But the thing never revealed itself. There was nothing but the pounding of my heartbeat in my ears. Whatever it was moving outside stopped suddenly in its tracks. Frantic, I looked over at the phone before remembering that it didn't work. I was trapped in here with whatever was outside waiting for me. That thing, whatever it was, didn't walk away. It simply evaporated into the night. It was just gone, leaving not even an echo of movement. The whole place just felt lighter after that. I could almost tell you when it disappeared. There was such a shift in the atmosphere. When I woke up the next morning, I tried to convince myself that it was a dream of some kind, but all of the reasons for why it could not have been a dream kept filling my mind as I prepared for the day. Almost like a muscle memory, I thought of calling someone again, of asking for help, before realizing it was not an option. I was trapped here. I had no other choice than to open that heavy door. My hands shook as I strained to pull it open, just as equally the result of the strain against my muscles as my own nervousness. I opened it just enough for me to peer into the hallway. There was nothing, however. It was quiet. For some reason, this was even more unsettling than if I had opened it to find a grotesque creature standing before me. Tiny traces of morning light streamed in from the crack of the door. I checked and rechecked before laughing to myself at my own fear. I ran out of the house, feeling like something was nipping at my heels, my hands shaking as I finally locked the door and left for the day, happy that I would be away from it for at least a little while. On the second night, I awoke to a gentle rapping on the door. They almost sounded exploratory, knocking lightly and then stopping for a brief moment to listen in before beginning again. Was I going crazy? Was this all in my mind? I imagined whatever was on the other side of the door, pressing its ear against it to listen for even the slightest sound emanating from the room. This continued through the night, and as a result, I could not fall asleep. It was like someone was hammering against the inside of my skull with each knock. After the clock slowly crept into the early morning of the next day, and with the test only a few hours away, finally, I couldn't stand it any longer. "Hello?" I called out curtly, before the fear returned, partnered with a sense of deep regret. Why did I call out to whatever the thing was? Why did I let it know I was here? Still, the knocking stopped after that. As had been the case the night before, there was no shuffling or any other evidence the thing had left. Instead, it just disappeared once more. And the place felt different again, like I was no longer being stalked, like I was alone. The knocking and the presence were completely gone, as if it had never existed, and in its place stood a deafening silence. My ears rang, searching for even the slightest movement. I woke up, exhausted. Somehow I had fallen asleep after all of that. I really did not want to open the door. Yesterday morning could be explained away as a dream, but 2 nights in a row? There was definitely something on the other side of the door, and it came at night, disappearing with an otherworldly deftness. I imagined it again, sitting out there, waiting for me. And with that dreadful thought in mind, I fearfully opened the heavy door that had kept that thing away from me throughout the night. As before, there was nothing. I wanted desperately to talk to the old woman, but I realized she had not left me with any contact information. I wasn't even sure how and when she would begin to pay me my salary. She was friendly enough, but even then, when I first met her, I felt she was hiding something. Would she really want to tell me anyway, even if she did know what it was? And now, it made sense to me. The way she had leaned against the door and the threshold. She was perhaps worried that I would examine it or see something she didn't want me to see. Part of me thought of leaving and not coming back, just dropping the key in the mailbox by the front door. But then, I might get in trouble with her. Maybe I wouldn't get paid, or maybe she could get me in trouble with the police, because I had just left the key and abandoned the house. One thing's for sure, as soon as I see her, I am going to let her know that there is something here and that she needs to find someone else. Maybe she hadn't tricked me. Maybe she didn't know, I tried to reason, giving her the benefit of the doubt, even though I was sure deep down this was not the case. No, she must have known what the room held in store for me, or else why the warning? Maybe she thought she was helping me in some way. I saw it differently, though. She had trapped an unsuspecting young woman in a home with whatever that thing was. Was I a sacrifice of some kind? Maybe it's not dangerous. It really hasn't done anything to harm me. Perhaps this would be the price for living in the house. I would have to deal with whatever that supernatural thing was that was listening for me on the other side of the door, like a benign ghost. But just because it had not done anything to me yet, it didn't mean that it wasn't dangerous. I needed to protect myself somehow. The woman had warned me several times to stay in the room after dark. What else had she said? That there was a gun in the storage room. I mulled it over in the minutiae of the rest of the day, the risks that came with the gun versus the reward for my safety. I was comfortable around guns, more than most. I had been a tomboy when I was younger, a type of stand-in son for my father. He loved hunting, and we had gone on regular trips throughout my late childhood and early adolescence. In fact, I'd spent a good deal of my youth going to gun clubs and learning how to properly and safely shoot. but I had not shot a gun since before my father passed. Plus, that storage and the darkness that inhabited it were just creepy. I might have to spend some time there searching for it, and it seemed like the kind of place where a minute was an eternity. I determined that it didn't matter. The gun meant protection, and even with me dusting off the cobwebs in my mind, I knew I could hit whatever it was and put it down if need be. It wasn't like I would be shooting across a long range. I would find the gun and bring it into the bedroom with me to protect myself, at least until I could talk to the woman again. I raced home as quickly as possible after class. I wanted to be sure I had enough daylight to look through that creepy storage closet and make it back to the room before sunset. After what didn't seem like too long of a period of time, I found the gun and some shells in a storage box laying underneath some books close to the door. Still, every moment in that dark closet felt like an eternity. This place was unsafe and dangerous, perhaps the most dangerous room in the house, even with whatever it was creeping around my door at night. This was where I really felt exposed. I sensed someone or something watching me the entire time, hidden somewhere in the darkness that lay just a few feet in front of me, no matter where I turned or which direction I walked. It was waiting for me, waiting until it could strike. I ran back to my room with whatever it was seemingly just behind me. I made it back and locked the door just as the sun was setting. I wondered how it had become so late in the day already. I didn't feel like it took me too long to find the gun, but the setting sun betrayed just how much time I had spent in that closet. Now that I was in better light, I inspected the gun. It looked old, but also well cared for. I could tell that someone had oiled it regularly, and given its age, I thought that it must be a reliable weapon. Almost immediately I went to work, examining its mechanics, making sure I knew how to load it. The box of shells looked old, too. The drawings on it, various pictures of people hunting different animals, with the words buckshot stenciled across the top, had clearly come from a time when artists were the ones who dominated the advertisements, when photos were too expensive. There wasn't any barcode on the box either. I imagined someone ringing the purchase up by hand in a different era, when purchases of any type required more than the cold computer efficiency that existed today. As before, when the night came, so did the knocking.
Go away. Leave me alone.
I demanded. But unlike the night before, this did not end the creature's threats, or entreaties, or whatever they were. Instead, it seemed to make the thing more forceful, angrier even. Suddenly there came from the other side of the door a deep, heavy pounding, as if the thing were slamming against it with a sledgehammer. The knocks came so loudly and forcefully, I imagined the door was going to come flying off the hinges, across the room, and go crashing through the giant windows on the other side. This thing was otherworldly in its strength. They came again and again, relentlessly. The whole house seemed to shake, and I was sure if this continued, the whole structure would topple, burying both me and the creature. I fumbled for the shotgun from under the bed, and with my hands shaking, grabbed the box of shells from the side table, then opened the loading port on the gun. I lost the first two of the shells on the bed, my hands tight with adrenaline. Finally, with the gun loaded, I turned to the door. Whatever it was, this thing was banging as forcefully as ever.
I have a gun,
I called out, voice shaking.
I'm not afraid to use it. I'm not afraid to use it if you don't go away.
The knocking stopped for a moment, as if whatever it was on the other side was intelligent and contemplating what I said. Then it began again, now with even more ferocity. An inhuman fury I was sure would crack the door wide open. I pictured it exploding into splinters, raining down upon me and exposing me to whatever lay on the other side.
Stop it. Stop it now.
I yelled against the pounding, easily drowning out my voice. shook the weapon angrily towards the door. As if driven by another force, the gun suddenly went off. There was now an eerie quiet left in the wake of the shot and the sudden halt of the thing's efforts against the door. Time seemed to stop for a second as I waited for what would come next. Then the slamming against the entrance began again, louder and heavier than ever. Whatever it was, the thing was desperate to get through the door. How could anything take a shot like that and keep moving without even a hint of damage? Desperate and fearful, I pumped and shot at the door again and again until there was nothing left in the magazine tube. The buckshot ripped and cut a large hole through it, sending splinters flying in all directions. The knocking stopped immediately. I sat there in bed, shaking with fear and anxiety, trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. I waited in anticipation, but the knocking didn't come back. My ears were ringing, so I couldn't really hear anything, but the door was no longer shaking from the pounding, and I couldn't feel the reverberations coming through the floor. Besides, whatever had been on the other side of that door, man or beast, could never have survived that. After what felt like an eternity of complete silence, but was probably not more than 15 minutes, I drew closer to the door. My whole body was still shaking. As I did so, an eyeball emerged, wrapped in an impenetrable darkness, hungrily peering through a hole ripped into the timbers. It seemed to almost be floating there on the other side of the door, desperate to get in. The orb darted its gaze about the room, searching and scanning for a second. Then when it found me, fixed an angry stare that tore through my soul and sought to devour it. The worst part of it all, though, was that it was not a human eye, or even some kind of animal. It was the eye of something else. A strange creature I had never seen before, and that I hope I never see again.
Thank you for joining us today. Please follow us if you dare. We will continue to create stories regularly and post them here. Until next time, when we gather here again to hear more tales told by the fire.